Hello everyone, and this is BioPhoenix here, and today we're going to be doing a top 10 list, which I have not done in quite some time. In fact, the last top list I did was not even a top 10, it was actually a top 5, funny enough. But this top list will be on my top 10 most favorite battle themes within RPGs. In fact, this idea for a top 10 was actually not my idea, it was actually a request that was from JRPG Gaming. So thank you very much for the idea, since I've been having a hard time trying to think of an idea for a top 10 list lately. So by all means, feel free to give us some of your ideas, and I'll try to get around to them whenever I can. But anyways, as for the main topic here, I'm pretty sure it should be self-evident that it's all about some of my favorite battle themes within RPGs, it's pretty self-explanatory. But in case you don't know what I mean, is that I'm talking about like the main battle theme, the one that typically plays throughout most of the game. Of course there are some games where the battle theme will change to another theme, which is fine, but I'm not going to get into ones that play in specialty battles or ones that play in like a boss battle. I think that would be good enough for another idea. So I really don't think there will be any more confusion after that. But one last thing I should say is that yes, obviously because I'm narrowing it down to 10, that's going to be kind of hard to do considering there's like a bajillion ones out there that are just so damn awesome, but of course I will do an honorable mention, so anyways, with that being said, let's start the top 10. So at number 10, we have Valkyrie Profile 2. I don't think I need to say much about the game, is that it's actually pretty damn awesome. But as for the song itself, I really do like this one quite a lot. Mostly because it just sounds really intense, it suits the theme really well, and I really do love that violin piece. In fact, that's probably my favorite part about the entire thing. So with that being said, there's not a whole lot else I can say about this one, other than that I just really like it a whole bunch and I can just never get tired of it. And for number 9, we have Arcana on the Super Nintendo. Now, before I talk about the song, all I have to say here is that this game, I do find it to be a pretty underrated Super Nintendo RPG. Now, just because I say it's underrated doesn't necessarily mean that it's like amazing game, because no, this game isn't amazing, but I did enjoy it for what it was, mostly for the gameplay and the music, but man, let me tell you, the music in this one definitely is really awesome. And yes, that does also include the battle theme, obviously. So one of the main reasons why I really like this one is because it's really fast-paced, it's really catchy, and I think they really did use the sound chip on the Super Nintendo really well with this one. In fact, every time I think about this game, the first thing that comes to my head is this song, which is definitely saying something. So yes, when it comes to the music in this one, the battle theme is probably one of my favorite songs within the game. And as for number 8, we have Shadow Hearts, and it just happens to be one of my favorites since I just never shut the fuck up about this game. Now, before I say which song I'm going to mention here is that I'm actually going to be talking about the one for the first game, which happens to be Brain Hopper, aka the China battle theme. Now, if you have seen my review on the third game, which happens to be From the New World, I actually said that that battle theme, which happens to be the North American one, is actually my favorite one within the entire series. But the reason why I'm not talking about that one in this video is because I actually talked about that one in another top 10 list, which happened to be the top 10 most motivational theme songs. So I figured I'd explain that out of the way first. So anyways, the battle theme within China, which is the first half of the first game, is definitely really awesome, mostly because it just sounds so weird sounding, but that's the reason why I like it, is because, well, as you know me, I like weird shit. And of course the song sounds really dark, which does suit this game perfectly since this game is a horror RPG, or at least an RPG with a horror setting, which is always awesome. But at the same time of sounding really weird and dark is that I also really like the bass line they have in this one. I just think it sounds really awesome. So yes, the battle theme for the first half of the first game is definitely really good, but it's also really weird. But that is really what makes it interesting. And as for number 7, we have Guardian Crusade on the PS1. As again, I do think this is a pretty underrated RPG on the system, but of course, it's definitely not the best one you'll ever play, but I do think it is pretty fun considering how lighthearted and quirky it is. And there's nothing wrong with that, considering I do think that not every single RPG has to be like super duper serious and has to be like over 100 hours long. But anyways, the music in this one is pretty good for the most part, but the battle theme is really interesting in a lot of ways, mostly because I do find it to be pretty unique for a typical battle theme. Because this one doesn't have any of the epic battle orchestrated music, or the badass heavy metal riffs or anything like that. It kinda has a smooth trance feel to it, if that makes any sense. If it doesn't, I guess the other thing I could say about it is that it kinda sounds like something you'd hear in like a platforming game. But I really don't think this song is unfitting or anything like that. I do find it is pretty fitting because, like I said, this is a pretty lighthearted, quirky game, and I do think this song does suit that very well. And of course, the song itself is just super duper catchy. So I will applaud them for doing something really different for an RPG, and I just love it a whole bunch. And as for number 6, we have Grandia 2. Now this is an RPG that I always hear so many good things about, but I never actually played it until somewhat recently. And from what I've played of the game, I can definitely say for myself that I really do like it quite a lot. And that also includes the music as well. But the reason why I really love the battle theme in this one is because it really has a good mixture of instruments. I mean, you got some really awesome sounding guitars, you got some piano, you got some violin, it just sounds pretty fucking awesome together. But weirdly enough, the first thing that came to my mind when I first heard this song was that it kind of reminded me of the remix in Super Smash Bros. Brawl of Shin Unigeshima. I forget if that's how it's pronounced, but either way, it was just a badass fucking song, and this one is also just equally as badass, but some parts of it do kind of remind me of that song for some reason, at least most of the guitar of it anyways. Although I'm pretty sure it's probably just me, but either way, I love both songs, and this one is definitely a really fucking awesome battle theme to a great game. And as for number 5, we have Arno Surge with Mikazuchi. I think that's how you say it. Well, if I remember correctly, this is the second battle theme that you hear later on in the game. The first one is also really good, but this one I prefer much more. Mostly because it's a very fast-paced sounding song. And as I said about the last one, this one has a really good mixture of like having some like violin pieces in it, and at the same time it also has some really awesome heavy metal guitars. It's pretty much right up my alley, and of course, with this game having some really awesome music in general, the battle theme just really does not disappoint whatsoever. So there's not much I can say here, considering I always praise the hell out of the music within this series, which just happens to be the Arcana series, in case you didn't know. But yes, personally, I fucking love it. As for number 4, we have a Final Fantasy game of some sort, because it's really hard to pick one, because not only is there so damn many of them, but pretty much every single game has an awesome battle theme. So whether you're playing my personal favorites within the series, which happens to be Final Fantasy 6 and 9, or if you're just playing one of my least favorite ones, which just happens to be Final Fantasy 13, no matter which one you're talking about when it comes to the battle theme, I think all of them are really fucking good. And what makes it even harder to pick one over the other is that some of them do sound very similar to one another, or at least like the starting point of them kinda does. And depending on the day that you're asking me this question of which one's my favorite battle theme within the series, I could potentially say a different answer every day, where I don't know, there could be some days where I might say like my favorite one would be the one from Final Fantasy 6, or it could be one from Final Fantasy 4, or the one from Final Fantasy 10, or 15, or whatever. So yes, it's really hard to just pick one, since they all do have that same exact epic feeling of music and all that kind of good shit. But as I said, no matter which one you're playing within the series, I do find that all the battle themes are really fucking good. And as for number 3, we have Chrono Trigger. Now, I think it's pretty obvious that this game really doesn't need an introduction whatsoever. But as for the battle music in general, this one is just fucking epic. Even though I do find it is kinda hard to really describe this song, but I'm pretty sure if you've played this game, or if at least if you've heard the song before, then It's just an amazing sounding song, and of course I just really like the way how the beginning part of it sounds, and then it just progressively gets better. I guess that's really the best way I can describe it, really, so either way, it's just fucking amazing. And as for number 2, we have The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 1. And holy shit, I fucking love this theme. But for a game that comes from the company Nihon Falcom, that's definitely not a surprise since most of their games have some really epic music, including one of my favorites, which just happens to be the East series. In fact, this battle theme kind of reminds me of a song that would play in one of those games. Although unfortunately, I couldn't find out who did the music for this game, but I have a feeling it might have been some of the same people that also worked with that series, but I don't know for sure. But regardless, I think it kicks ass. So it has some really good mixtures of having some guitars, piano, violin, trance. It kind of has that prog feel to it, which is definitely a good thing for me because, you know, I fucking love prog music. So that's really the best way I can describe this theme, but really I can't complain whatsoever. So yeah, it's definitely a huge favorite of mine. So before we get into number 1 spot, let's talk about some honorable mentions right here. So the first one I want to mention here is Manakamiya, and then there's the Lunar games, and then there's Phantasy Star 4, Dragon Quest 8, Xenogears or any of the Xeno games in general, Fairy Fencer F, The Last Story, and finally the last one I'm going to mention here is the Tales of series, which as again also has a shitload of them that have some really awesome music. And as to be expected, I can't mention every single one out there that I really like a lot. So anyways, now let's start moving on to the number 1 spot, and that one happens to be one of the Shin Megami Tensei games, and yes, I can actually pick one this time. But before I say which one has my favorite battle theme, I just want to say that all of them pretty much do have some really awesome battle themes in general, especially the one for Digital Devil Saga, which I really was thinking about putting that one at number 1, but then I remembered one that I actually like just a little bit more. And that one happens to be Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner Raidu Kuzunoha. Yes, it's the action RPG that has some detective elements in it, which is pretty awesome. But of course, the battle theme in this one is just fucking amazing. So it's a badass heavy metal sounding song, which is always awesome. And the composer for this series in general usually just does a badass job all around, which happens to be Soji Meguro, definitely a big favorite of mine. So as I already said, it has some really awesome guitars, and of course it's also really catchy to me, and it's always awesome to have this kind of music within hack and slashing some enemies, and it's also very fast paced. So there's nothing much else I can say here, but it's just a huge favorite of mine that I can just listen to for hours and hours on end. that is my top 10 most favorite battle themes within RPGs. So thank you very much JRPG Gaming for giving me this idea. And as I said before, there's like a shitload of other ones I could have mentioned, but you know, I'd be here all day. So what are some of your favorite battle themes within RPGs? Whether it be one that I mentioned or one that I didn't talk about, no matter which one you pick, feel free to say so, and of course, don't be afraid to give me an idea what I could do for another top 10 list, since I really do miss doing these because I haven't done them in quite some time. So with that being said, thanks for watching and commenting, and have yourselves a great day.